afternoon. Actually, it's not a good afternoon, I must be honest. It's not a day any of us here wanted to happen, and the thousands of others whose lives Vijay touched. I use the word Vijay because he refused to allow me to say Sir or G or Mr. Thiruvady. He always wanted to be known as just Vijay, including on the invitation sent out, and to me that's the ultimate mark of humility in a person. So one of the many facets of Vijay that I hope will come out in the next half an hour, apart from the obvious that he was, I think most of us here were touched by his encyclopedic knowledge, his erudition, his style, whether it is speaking style or sartorial style. And I think a lot of us know a lot of very, very smart people. But to be able to bring all that knowledge and connect to people, whether they're a school child or a distinguished scientist in his 70s, who are often in the same group, is a special gift that Vijay had. We're here to celebrate his life, and I think he would be happy if he spoke about what he did, his achievements, his passions. I don't know about many of you, but I first met him at the big rock in front of Lalbagh. Is that true for many of you? And so what I did with permission from the family is that I actually recorded once him speaking at the Lalbagh Rock, and I'm going to play it for 90 seconds and I'll keep my eyes closed and you're welcome, but just try to get Vijay into the room. And this is how he first met a lot of people over the last 18 years.
To start with, Lalbagh is very, very special in many ways. Today we talk about the little walled-in area, which is a public park and a botanic garden. But we can go right back to Gondwana land, which broke up into 4 or 5 pieces, and one of them was the Indian tectonic plate, which moved northwards and finally collided with the Eurasian continent, created the Tibetan Highlands and the Himalayas, and the great river valley systems, the Indus, Brahmaputra, and the Ganges were formed after that. Down in the peninsula, halfway between both Mangalore and Madras, right in the center of the plateau at 3,000 feet, Bangalore city was formed. The formation of the peninsula and the rock which just south in Lalbagh is quite spectacular. Netherworld rocks from the center of the earth, hypogene and trappean rocks, all of them under great pressure and temperature, all of them molten, and all of them going towards the surface of the earth. Before they hit the surface of the earth, they mix with the molten magma, finally break through, and then raft onto the lithosphere of the earth, and then stabilize 3 billion years ago, 3,000 million years ago. And the Lalbagh rock, as we say today, is an outcrop of that prodigious outburst. This rock is something which geologists from all over the world come to study even today. And it signifies a material which has undergone plutonic, volcanic, and sedimentary cycles, all telescoped into each other more than once, leading to deformation and metamorphism. And that is what we see in Lalbagh today. It's the finest place in the world to study the formation of the earth.
I'm sure that sounded familiar to many of you. He was special. I mean, it was just 90 seconds. The sweep of what he spoke about, from geology to history it was just incredible. And what he spoke at such depth. So there's so much about him, and I'm grateful that we have recorded some of it because he was very keen to share knowledge. I'll just give you 2 personal anecdotes. I first met him when he was 64 years old in June 2005. I'm almost 30 years younger. I had this crazy idea of doing walks in Bangalore, and someone connected me to him and he said, I would like to do a walk in Lalbagh, and I'm so grateful that we met. But the humility of the man, and I'm going to say something which you may not believe, till the age of 64, he had never spoken to an audience of more than 2 people. He was not a speaker. He was an erudite person. And his humility, that he spent 2 months with me, almost saying, how do we do this? It was very difficult and awkward for me, a younger person, but his humility to learn how to transmit his knowledge to an audience was incredible. He worked at it hard, and he loved cricket, and he padded up for his second innings at the age of 64, and for the last 18 years, I repeat, 18 years. Every Sunday, often Saturdays, he was out there in Lalbagh or Cubbon Park, often during the week, except for the pandemic. And when he was unwell, he was out there. I think it is a record for the maximum number of walks anyone in the world has done. Because he would do it without fail, even at times when he had clear physical difficulties that many of us would actually fall down for. He was scheduled to do a walk next Sunday, which I'm filling in for. He was scheduled to do last Sunday. So he was going at it till the age of 82. So one thing was he had a brilliant second innings. The other thing was he took on two massive projects that most of us would even dream of attempting in our youth. He started a book on the hereditary trees of Bangalore in his 60s. He did it all alone. Few of us helped him out. It was a huge, brilliant work the first time it's been done. And then he attempted a book on Lalbagh, which has not been done before, in his late 70s. And Vijay was not the kind of person to blow his own trumpet, so let me do a bit of it because he shared with me he had a huge regard for botanists around the world, including in Kew Gardens and people who he regarded extremely important people. Many of them got back to him personally and said, "This is a fantastic book." And I know that for him, it was a life well lived because he achieved what he wanted to do. He wrote the book, the magisterial authoritative book on Lalbagh. It got endorsed and thanked by a lot of people who really knew. The last thing I'll say is that I look at Vijay as someone who wanted to share knowledge. That was very important to him. He had it, he wanted to share it till the very end. I think he'd be happy if I shared some knowledge today. So I was thinking, what should I say here on this podium to make me worthy of him? You know where we are sitting? We're sitting exactly between Lalbagh and Cubbon Park. We could not have chosen a better location for Vijay. His heart was in Lalbagh, but as you know, he started a walk in Cubbon Park. We're also sitting on the banks of the Sampangi tank, which was built in the time of Kempe Gowda, who built a Hoo in the Tota, which became Lalbagh. So we're very much part of the area that Vijay always talked about. And he always spoke about the imperial imprint, the division between Bangalore Club and the city, and we're right there too. So from many points, this location is so apt. He would have absolutely loved it. I saw an Araucaria outside, the Christmas tree, which he has always said is the most traveled tree in the world because it is native to New Zealand and it's now growing in woodlands. And I will end with this. Vijay was meticulous in his research. He would never say anything which he believed was wrong. His language was perfect. He spoke like a book. He was very concerned about correctness of information. There's one thing I wish he was wrong in. I don't think he believed in an afterlife. I don't think he believed in reincarnation. I hope he was wrong and I hope he comes back to be among us. Thank you. We have a few other people who will speak. I'm going to invite Maya JAYAPAL to please come on stage. Maya was among many things, the author of several books on Bangalore, and I will say the inspiration for me to start my walks was after reading her book. So Maya, please come on stage. She has been with Vijay several times on his walks and they have been in touch for several years.
So good afternoon to all the friends and admirers of Vijay Thiruvady. I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak about Vijay, who is very dear to me. I think all of you are familiar with all the attributes of this almost legendary character. That is his knowledge, the fund of knowledge that he had, the almost photographic memory he had for facts and figures, and for everything that, as I say, for everything that grew and bloomed. He had, again, as Arun says, he had this generosity to share things with people, and he was a perfect gentleman. Very, very courteous, almost old-fashioned gallantry. Who says that Sir Walter Raleigh has not come back to life? So I'm not going to talk about those things because I think people are going to say all that. So I'm going to talk about the feelings that I had for him and for his work. The more I live, and I'm exactly Vijay's age actually, I feel that there are no coincidences in life, right? Everything has a purpose, everything is given a little bit of a nudge. So what happened is that one night at about 2, I think it was about 2 in the morning, the phone rang, or rather there was some noise, and the noise was some notifications which came up. And I did what people don't want to do but end up doing. Picked up the mobile and looked and found that somebody had written to me saying that Vijay had passed away. Of course, I tried to go back to sleep. I couldn't. I tossed and turned till about 5 in the morning. And then I found that there was another notification and this poem came up. It was a poem sent to me by someone I hardly know. It was a poem written by nobody that I know. But I looked at it and I said, this is what I feel about Vijay the man. And I'm going to read that. And at the end, when I come to the end, it's a very short poem. So when I come to the end, I would like you to listen to it in silence so that the words linger in silence and it resounds in silence. It's called Adrift, A-D-R-I-F-T, Adrift. Everything is so beautiful and I am so sad. This is how the heart makes a duet of wonder and grief. The light spraying through the lace of the fern is as delicate as the fibers of memory forming their web around the knot in my throat. The breeze makes the birds move from branch to branch, as this ache makes me look for those I've lost in the next room, in the next song, in the laugh of the next stranger. And in the very center, under it all, what we have is that what no one can take away from us. And all that we have lost face each other. It is there that I am adrift, feeling punctured by a holiness that exists inside everything. It is there that I am adrift, feeling punctured by a holiness that exists inside everything. I am so sad and everything is so beautiful. I am so sad and everything is so beautiful.
I'd like to call Dr. Mallik, who's an astrophysicist and who was also the biographer of Vijay's grandfather.
Thank you. Difficult for me to speak, but Meera requested, so I can hardly say no to her. I got to know Vijay within a month of my arrival in Bangalore in 1974, Jan, and he was introduced to me by my cousin Mithu Chib, founder of the Spastic Society of India, whose parents used to live on Rainier Street. Mithu and Vijay were classmates in Delhi, and I was, of course, introduced. I didn't know his name was Vijay. I was introduced to him by his college nickname, which is Maggie. And for years afterwards, maybe until, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, I used to call him Maggie. And when it changed to Vijay, I really don't know. Now, Vijay lost his father at a very young age of 8. And he was raised by his grandfather, Sir K.S. Krishnan, the noted physicist, also credited as the co-discoverer of the Raman effect, which brought the only Nobel Prize to India in the last 100 years almost. Vijay grew up in his grandfather's house in Delhi. Krishnan was the director of the National Physical Laboratory. And Vijay loved and respected his grandfather, actually worshipped him. And his entire personality, I have known him for 49 years, his entire personality was shaped up by the ideals he saw manifest in Sir K.S. Krishnan, his grandfather. His honesty, his integrity, probity in public life, even his love of nature and trees, and he shared with his grandfather a phenomenal memory that all of us know. So Krishnan died as suddenly as Vijay did, and of course it was his third heart attack. For Vijay it must have been the first. And soon after, National Physical Laboratory sent word to Krishnan's son, Ambi K. Srinivasan, we call him Ambi, that all the director's papers will have to be cleared out from NPL. And so Ambi and Dr. T.M. Srinivasan, Vijay's son-in-law, they went and cleared out these papers in National Physical Laboratory Director's office. A huge number. There are bound volumes of journals, professional, personal correspondence, and all kinds of things. And so they gave some away to NPL Library, but most of it they collected in huge suitcases and brought them home. I think they lived in Green Park at that time, right, Shanta? And later, when Ambi moved to Ahmedabad, this moved with him to Ahmedabad. Now, Vijay owed something to his grandfather because he always thought it's his grandfather who made him. There's no question about it. So when Vijay wanted all these papers to be transferred to his custody in Bangalore, and with that in mind, he made several trips to Ahmedabad and brought all these things to Bangalore in several suitcases. And Meera would realize how messy it was, her living room in 519 15th Main, Koramangala. As Krishnan's centenary was approaching in 1998, Vijay thought something should be done, and he called me and said, Dipankar, would you like to see what I have? I said, sure. And oh boy, that was something. It's like a fantastic thing. I said, boy, this is absolute treasure trove. I mean, we have to do something. Then he said, what? Then I thought about it and said, we'll write a book. But then Krishnan was a condensed matter physicist mostly, and I'm an astronomer. So I needed help. And I have a colleague, Shobhushaji Chatterjee, who's a condensed matter physicist trained in IISc. He came forward and said, I'll join you. So he and I started looking at the papers and started this work. And of course, Vijay and I then sort of plowed through southern Tamil Nadu to all the places that were associated with Krishnan and also with Vijay. His village in Vatrap, then Sriviliputtur, where Krishnan went to school, Madurai, where he went to college, and then, of course, Madras Christian College, where he got his bachelor's degree. And with all this experience, we sat down to write. We also went to Delhi, met Krishnan's associates, Ajit Ram Verma and S.K. Joshi and all of them. And S.K. Joshi said something to me which has stuck in my mind ever since. I was leaving, he was the chairman of the Defense Recruitment Board. I was leaving his office and he said, come here, young man. I was quite young then. I said, what? You're going to write about Krishnan, right? I said, yes. Please remember that he wasn't an ordinary man. He was a saint. I said, I'll remember that. So the book took about 10 years to write. 2007 it was finished, but published in 2012, early January. It was released in Nias, and it was also released in Delhi, INSA. Got good reviews, and Vijay was very happy, including his entire family, the surviving family, which is his uncle, Krishnan's younger son, Raman, and Mrs. Srinivasan and Dr. Srinivasan, daughter and son-in-law, and so on. But the work was not over. This huge bundle of papers, a huge number. What is to be done? That has to be, and Vijay worried about it, and I worried about it. So it's like a huge rock around our neck. What to do? It has to go somewhere to be preserved for posterity. And we tried all kinds of things. Should we send it to Royal Society? Krishnan was a fellow. Then Vijay said, grandfather wouldn't like it to go out of India. Okay, in India. So, Nehru Memorial Library, we went and met Mahesh Rangarajan and so on, almost going through when the current dispensation in Delhi destroyed the library. It no longer exists in the form it did. And it's not now called the Museum of Prime Ministers of India, and we had nothing to do with it. Mahesh was sacked. Then we tried Indian Institute of Science. There also, Balram was not very forthcoming, and he said, well, our archives, fledgling state, and so on. And you wouldn't believe it. Through a friend, Dr. Indira Chaudhary, Indira told me, why don't you try NCBS, National Center for Biological Sciences? Its archives, very well maintained. So on June 14th, 2 months ago, Vijay and I, with our family, went and visited the NCBS archives, which is laid in the basement of their building, which used to be Obaid Siddiqui's office, and we were absolutely impressed. This was of the quality of archives that I have known about. The Royal Society or Copenhagen, the Niels Bohr Archives, or the Institute of Physics Archives in New York City. This was something fantastic. So Vijay and I spent a whole day there. And on June 21st, Venkat Srinivasan, the chief of the archives, came and took away 26 boxes of papers in a truck. Vijay signed the memorandum of understanding. It's all now getting catalogued and digitized and everything, and will be available to scholars all over the world in about a year, 6 months to a year. So Vijay fulfilled his last obligation to his grandfather. Krishnan's paper is now for everyone to see. Thank you.
We have Dr. Saraswathy Ganapathy. She and Girish Karnad were very good friends with Vijay and went on several walks with him.
Thank you. Well, it seems appropriate to have to hobble up here because the last time I met Vijay, fortunately for me, was because I had to hobble. I had always wanted to do the Lalbagh walks with him, but I'm not great at walking, as you probably will witness. And he finally called and said, if you're going to do this, then we have a buggy tour of Lalbagh. You'd better come now. So I rushed off there, got in the buggy, had the cheek to argue with him about a few things, and said, oh, a Norfolk Island pine. And Vijay politely said, actually, it's an Araucaria. Ah, a Talipot palm. Actually, it's a traveler's palm. But with the same kindness that I'm sure you all are familiar with. He didn't make you feel like an idiot. He made you feel like somebody who was appropriately interested and excited, but could do with a little information, which he provided in the most marvelous fashion. And my great regret is that I won't be able to pick his brains for so much more. Trees, paintings, I'm sure many of you got that message from him about his He had found a painting that he had done in school or college, and we talked about why don't we all start painting again? Isn't it marvelous how all children paint and then we stop doing this kind of thing? And of course, this last amazing donation that he made, when I wanted to hear more from him about his grandfather. Like a lot of things, I've left it too late, but all I have learned from Vijay, I will treasure. We knew each other through being Valley School parents, and while a few other friends here and I would go there and rage and storm at parent meetings, Vijay and Meera, well, Meera did her share of storming as well, I think. But Vijay was always very calming and reassuring about how things would change. And it really, it meant a lot. And all I can say is I've been very fortunate to have known him, at least to the extent one did. And I know many of our mutual friends feel the same, and we're all richer, and Bangalore is richer for Vijay having been part of it. Thanks.
I'd like to call ANIL CHINNIAH, Koramangala resident and neighbor for many decades with Vijay and Meera.
Meera requested me to speak. I don't know if I can give him the real tribute that he deserves. Meera said he was very fond of me. He basically, I know him, my father knew him many years ago, but I got to know him in the last decade or so. And it was just like for everyone else, through his walks, you can't but be impressed by his knowledge, his range on different topics and everything else. But what I would like to say is his legacy is not just about what he told. He left a lasting impression on many of us. And I guess for me and for many of us in Koramangala, it's an impression which has had an impact, and it's a living legacy. As a result of his influence, many of us took to trees, the love of trees, and we were fortunate we've been able to translate that into planting trees, and we hope will continue his legacy. But none of that could have been happened if it wasn't for somebody like him. And like what Saras said and what Arun has said, he was so knowledgeable, but he would bring it alive in a way which would connect with us. He would not make us feel inferior, but you couldn't but be impressed with what he was aware of, whether it was about the trees, the history, the culture, and how it all brought together. He was a very good storyteller, needless to say. And he was very universal in his outlook. He was not biased, he was very objective, and he gave credit where it was due to one and all. And it was hard not to be impressed by him. And for me, my biggest legacy will be if we can emulate, we can follow through on what he wanted. He wanted trees, he wanted greenery for Bangalore. And I think if us, the next generation, Arun's my age, if we can continue with what he started, I think that will be the best tribute we can pay for him. That's all I can say for now. Thank you.
Sandhya Vasudevan. Sandhya is the former managing director at Deutsche Bank and Thomson Reuters, a friend of Vijay and his sister Shanta's niece.
I'm really honored to have been asked to speak at this event. Vijay has been somebody who's been part of my, call it my emotional ecosystem because of Shanta Chitti. When she got married, I was a young child, and she used to talk about her childhood in Delhi, the garden where they ran. So while I didn't know him, I could imagine the children running. And so those memories or those are the early remembrance I have of him. The next one is when they had gotten married and the reception at Taj Weston. Again, you're still fairly young, going to a wedding reception. Meera was beautiful. It was a lovely evening. That was my earliest memory of Vijay. Obviously, didn't have much of a conversation beyond saying, hi, I exist. But Over the years, I think Shantachiti would share a little bit about what's happening in his life, his career successes, his travels, a very widely traveled person. He was also a very modern human being in the truest sense. He wasn't somebody who, if you come from very traditional backgrounds, he had perspectives which were very relevant even for the future. So when I actually did spend time with him the last couple of years, it was obviously in the context of botanical art, and I was just leaving Deutsche, and we decided to do a number of events together. So some friends of mine and I could hang out at their house in Koramangala, go through his books, understand what botanical art was all about. His passion was so strong. He said, oh, let's do a art competition, not having any idea as to what effort that'll take. But he connected us to all kinds of people. But irrespective of how the series of 5-6 events happened, it was because it culminated in the walk. But he started off with a session where he shared his knowledge on why this is so important for all of us. While everyone's spoken about how well-read he is, how multi-faceted in his thinking he has been, I think what struck me was he was a genuinely inclusive human being. Even the few people who came together for that event, they didn't know him. When they heard about his passing, so many people reached out to say, this is so sudden. And all the feelings that are being expressed by people who know him got expressed, which tells you the mark of a person. I'm honestly honored to have known him and learned more from him, from his sister. And it's been an absolute honor to have met him. And as a lot of people have said, he's left his mark on all of us.
I'm going to invite Captain PRABHALA, former chairman and managing director of Bharat Electronics Limited and a trustee of the Bangalore Environment Trust, and he has worked closely with Vijay for decades.
Good afternoon to all of you. I can't remember precisely when I came to know Thiruvady. Must be about 15-18 years ago. Mr. Zafar Fateh Ali, the founder of Bangalore Environment Trust, invited him to join BET as a trustee, and that is the occasion, because I was also in BET, that was the first occasion I met him. What distinguished him from others is his passion for trees and his interest in trees is not merely in terms of, preserving the greenery of Bangalore, but a scholarly study of trees. And he knew that ancient Hindus had a great respect for trees, and around temples and ponds, trees were planted in plenty. He suggested a study of firstly the old and vastly spread trees in and around Bangalore. He called them heritage trees, and also around temples and ponds, devarakadus and gundutopus. We suggested this to the tourism department, and they agreed to finance the publication of these books. And it is entirely Vijay Thiruvady's efforts which resulted in these two masterly studies. And subsequently, he began conducting tours on Sunday mornings around Lalbagh, explaining to people the various species, their peculiarities, and their origins if they were not from India, etc. Later on, he came across, by accident, if I may say so, illustrations, botanical illustrations in Lalbagh Library. They were in a dilapidated state, neglected, and perhaps nobody knew that they were such illustrations. And he unearthed them, and he realized the great value of them, and therefore again he took great trouble in having them catalogued, restored, and labeled properly, because many of them did not have the titles. These were illustrations made about 150 to 200 years ago by the botanists and the horticulturalists who managed Lalbagh, and something like 1,100 illustrations by unknown illustrators and painters. The foremost of them was a person called Chiluvuraju, and these illustrations, with the help of Srishti Art School and Art and Design School, were restored, catalogued, and digitized, and and then they were presented to Lalbagh, and we asked them to look after them well, because it's a treasure which you can't replace. And we kept checking with Lalbagh what they were doing, but till recently, I'm sorry to say that they didn't take care. But the current director, the joint director, one Dr. Jagdish, realized the value of these illustrations, and he is taking proper care to store them and to preserve them. Now, this again inspired Thiruvady to go into the origins of Lalbagh and the people who contributed to its growth, to the variety of trees, and to all the buildings and structures in Lalbagh. He spent about 5 years researching, writing, and communicating with Kew Gardens and Royal Edinburgh Gardens, Botanical Garden in Calcutta, and the result of that massive study is the book on Lalbagh, which came out about 3 years ago. I can't think of any scholarly study of such a nature which delved into the history of Lalbagh for over 500 years. And of course, everybody knows Vijay Thiruvady as the conductor of walks, but people don't know that he also used to conduct walks around MEG, Madras Engineering Group. Again, all of us who live in Bangalore do not know what treasure of trees the army has under their control. The ASC, the MEG, and of course the Air Force in Jalahalli and in the HAL area. They have vast variety of trees and very ancient trees. And fortunately, MEG realized that these need to be again catalogued and shown and be seen by others also. So this was another walk that he used to conduct. So his sudden death, his unexpected death is a loss not only to the family, but to whole of Bangalore. And I join all of you in mourning his death and honoring him for eternity. He will be missed, and I hope in due course somebody else will emerge who will carry on the good work he was doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Captain. Is Lily here? Lily? Yeah. Yeah, Lily DECHAMMA, who was actually his assistant and worked closely with him through the pandemic on the Lalbagh book.
I'm just going to talk to you all about one of my fondest memories with Mr. Vijay. And that used to be on the Lalbagh walk, of course. We had this one tree, the Ficus myseriensis, otherwise known as the Gonimara. Okay, he enjoyed this tree thoroughly. So we would, every single time we took a walk, we would stand under the tree, take in the tree, take in the surroundings, look at all the squirrels running around, the rodents, the other birds that would frequent the tree. And he would then go on to tell me how self-sufficient this tree was and how very, how it contributed to nature. So that's all I want to say. I'm not very well prepared today for this, but I will thoroughly miss him, and miss every single time I will walk in Lalbagh, he will always be in my thoughts.
Good afternoon. My name is PROCHETA. My dad is the one who spoke about Sir K.S. Krishnan and a little bit of the history of Vijay uncle and his grandfather. So obviously the families know each other before any of us children were born. I have a message from Dhananjay. Danu was here, of course, for the past week and had to rush back on work and for his young family as well. And I guess Appu was supposed to, Mrityunjay was supposed to read this, but he said he wouldn't be able to get through it, so if I could do it. And I said, there's no guarantee that I'll be able to get through it, but I'll try my best. Meera auntie and Vijay uncle have often called me their third son, because I've spent half my childhood with Appu and Dhana and in their house, as well as, of course, all these wonderful trips with the family to, whether it's playing tennis, going to cricket matches, all over the country in that sense. Have had something or the other to do with Mrityunjay, Dhananjay, Meera auntie and Vijay uncle. So I'll just read the short note that Dhanu wrote and I'll end it there. Our father, an incredible man of many talents, qualified as an architect, made his career in engineering and marketing, and eventually completed his last chapter focusing on his true love, spending his time with trees and plants, understanding and learning about them, and spreading a good word or two about them. He had many passions: bird watching, aviation, building gliders, sports like tennis, golf, cricket, etc., history, to name a few. He encouraged us in similar fashion and convinced us that this will stand us in good stead into our futures. We strive accordingly. He seemed to always know the right path and followed it. Importantly, he made sure we did too. We will attempt to live up to those standards he set and hope we can make him proud. In our time of perceived crisis, he was calm and had unwavering faith. He seemed to know solutions where his advice was simple yet pertinent and always proved effective. We have lost our father and so much with him gone. Everything seems hard and unclear. Honoring him would be to find our way as he did and live our lives by what he taught us. We strive to go forth with this in our minds. Our father, we will miss him.
to complete the memorial, I'd like to invite PRATEETI BALLAL, who has organized several walks and lectures by Vijay.
Reflecting on all the eloquent tributes that people have offered today, but also all the ones that have poured in these last few days, I'm realizing that some of my happiest times in the last few years have been on Vijay's walks in Lalbagh. Thank you, Vijay, for this immeasurable gift. They brought so much joy and inspiration that I wanted to share it with others and tried to take as many friends as possible on the walks. Vijay was a masterful storyteller, as many have said, and under the green canopy of Lalbagh, the luminous botanical world came alive in a way that I'd never imagined, despite a childhood spent wandering around outdoors. As Maya said to me when I told her, she said, "We are all richer for having known him, which is why we are all here." Apart from his extraordinary knowledge and the way he conveyed it, Vijay was also a thorough gentleman. He had infinite patience with queries about trees. I worked on a tree map with him for the Bangalore Club, and he always gave thoroughly researched answers to my endless questions after consulting multiple books. If he didn't know, he would say so, a rare quality in today's world. He always said, "I am not a botanist or a historian," but he gave thousands of Bangaloreans and visitors a greater appreciation of their city's history and its green heritage. He was also a great listener, gave wise and measured counsel, and had a gift for friendship, as we can see at the gathering today. People who had just met him once or twice on a walk say he left such an indelible impression on them. Many of you might know, I think there was a reference to this, that he was called Maggie in his early years for his magnetic personality. There are several people the Thiruvady family would like to thank today. All of our speakers for their kind remarks, all of you who are here today, many who have written tributes, sent messages and food, and called. Mrs. Meera Thiruvady would especially like to thank all those who came on Vijay's walks at 7 a.m. in the morning, rain or shine. We would also like to thank the Woodland staff and Shobha who have been so warm and helpful. We now request everyone to stand in prayer and observe a minute of silence. Thank you. If you would like to pay your respects with an offering of flowers, please come forward. Lunch will be served. There is also a buffet for those who prefer in Woody's Hall in the building opposite. You can enter from the main drive on the left. And finally, we'd like to close with Vijay's voice again. I think Arun has another recording. So as you come up for flowers, those of you who would like to, please listen.
Auntie Meera would also like to thank Prateeti and Arun for organizing this today. And the Thiruvady family wishes and thanks everyone for coming here today.
I just want to add one thing which Vijay is to share with me about Meera, who refuses to allow me to call her Meera auntie or Meera ma'am. So Meera, you were the pillar of strength. While Vijay traveled the world, you brought up the children, and in a way you allowed him to do what he had to do, down to typing out all his messages. And you would say Meera is wonderful at transcribing, wonderful at typing, and he was not very good at technology initially. And I think much of the output that we have seen of Vijay from the musings on the website were actually done by you. So thank you very much. Also, to keep the occasion a celebration of Vijay's life, we selected about 4 or 5 of Vijay's favorite stories. Many of you have heard them. With your permission, we will play them in the background rather than any music. And if you want to relive some of the moments of Vijay's storytelling, it will be played as well while you proceed for lunch.